Today, I just want to talk a little bit about dream psychology. And the approach I'm going to take is a Freudian approach following Sigmund Freud, the famous father of psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud lived from the 1850s right through to around 1939 or so. He was an Austrian doctor. He started off as a neurologist. He would then move into psychotherapy, and psychotherapy wasn't a thing when he began. So there's different ways of seeing dreams and dream psychology, but I personally believe that the most masterful one is the uh, dream psychology as portrayed by Sigmund Freud. This is his famous book. It is a big tome. It is around about 856 pages, 860 pages, big book. It's written 1900, The Interpretation of Dreams. And it's a really path-breaking book. I can't verify its reality because nobody can, but I think you can see anecdotally it makes a lot of sense. So basically, here's what Freud believes about dreams. And Freud basically believes as that a dream is a wish fulfillment. So what's actually happening, according to Freud, is that in order to fit in with society, we repress a lot of or the things we really desire, the things we really want. And there's also aspects of ourselves which might desire something that we're not aware of. We might have animosity towards a loved one and we can't deal with it. We might have a sexual attraction towards somebody that we can't deal with. We might have complex feelings. So often it's just in the what he calls the unconscious. Today we talk about the conscious and the subconscious. Back then they would talk more about the unconscious, but the same thing as far as I can see. So that often there's things there which we cannot deal with. So in order to fit into society, we kind of have to squeeze ourselves or repress ourselves. So civilization is repressive in nature. And he talks about this a lot of civilization as discontent from 1915, I think it is. If my memory serves me correctly, might be say from the date. Um, so, but these desires that we have, so it's not necessarily what your ego desires. Yeah, you have a desire as ego, but there's also desires in the background. They're all trying to come out. And so for him, it's kind of an energetic problem. And you got to remember, he was educated as a neurologist. He did a monogram, a paper on neurology. He wanted to get into neurology, but he was told that he wouldn't have an academic future because he was a Jew and there was a lot of anti Semitic feelings at the time. So, what he did instead was he went into psychotherapeutic practice, and there wasn't psychotherapy the way we have it today. And so he worked it out initially with a guy called James Brewer, and then on his own, and he came up with his own theories. And so he basically was always looking for an energetic model to explain things, which kind of reflects his training in physiology, the idea of neurons, which are electrochemical. A charge goes through a neuron and then it releases dopamine and stuff like that. That message goes to another neuron. So he kind of has a mechanical approach to it. So what are these desires? So these desires are many things which we can't deal with, but they energetically to have a balance, we have to release them in some way or other. And so the dream is a wish fulfillment, and the wish has to find a way forward. There's a very important aspect of Fry's viewpoint is a thing called the superego or inner critic. And the superego is a critical faculty developed early in life, probably by around 5, 6, 7 years of age, eight at max. And it's the thing that says you're bad, you're good, you can, you can't, you should, you would, you couldn't. And it might be as in an external vice, like you can't do it, or it can also be like I can't do it. Depends how we interpret, but it's that inner critical vice. And so it keeps on repressing anything that is not appropriate. But those thoughts still have to find a way forward. And so there's two main ways that the thought will work. And it will work mainly through condensation and displacement. Condensation is where you take two or more factors in a dream and you put them together. And so you have like some aspect of the dream is representing multiple things. So one thing we have to understand with dream psychology, Freudian dream psychology, is that it's not this thing like it's a castle that represents wealth. It's a house that represents yourself. It's the ocean that represents emotions. Okay, it where you see a lot of these dream psychology books, and you just list off symbolic items, and some of those are fairly universal. Things like your teeth falling out, your hair is too long. These sort of things are often fairly universal symbols of insecurity. But what he would say is really your dream psychology is quite individual, and it's based upon associations. So he used the free association a lot, as it's based upon free associations that are your associations. So one person might dream of a castle and it represents something to them, and somebody else might dream of a very similar castle but means a different thing. So what we actually have to ask the person is, what's the first thing that pops into your mind when you see a castle? And you kind of ask them, what's the first thing that comes into mind? First thing that comes into mind. And so in dream interpretation, you have to see, well, what associations are coming up? Another thing that he says, whatever's in the dream represents something that happened that day. Now, it might link to something previous, but always link to something that happened that day. And so we can also ask what happened yesterday. And often we see that. So condensation is where we see many, many things combined into one. That's a condensation of like different characters, different people, etc. Uh, an example of a condensation would be maybe, for example, a person has their father is somebody that they love, and their father has a beard. And in the dream, they see their father with the beard. But their father's very nasty. He's not like he normally would be. I was thinking, why is daddy like that? But when they reflect on the dream, they realize that there's another person who also has a beard, who's maybe their boss, and they don't like their boss. So they're seeing their father, but their father's acting like the boss. So actually, this will be probably indicative that they're having some issues with their boss. They don't want to consciously deal with the issues with their boss. It's too upsetting. So they're blanking, they're trying to repress that thought, that anxious thought, that worrying thought they're trying to repress. But the thought then basically transforms into their father, who they love. And so they see their father, but their father's not their father. So that's an example of a condensation of two different people, which is metaphorical in meaning. Okay, it's metaphors, condensation, metaphor, multiple meanings. And so a dream will often give us many multiple meanings inside the dream. Okay, uh, so that's one way that we see condensation metaphor. Another thing we see in the dream is a thing called displacement. And displacement in the dream is basically where one thing is put onto another thing and another thing, and it's like it's making it less so. So, for example, maybe you have a lot of anger towards somebody, but in the dream you have anger towards your auntie who you love. But how does that work? Because you love your auntie, and yet why are you angry at her? That's silly. And that silliness is reducing it. So you're trying to find a way of not dealing with it. So this is displacement, where you're displacing. And this is basically called autonomy, where things are autonomous, where things are a little bit boring. So the official word for condensation, I might mispronounce it, but it's Verdichtung. 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 Now, I might be killing it. That's the spelling. Displacement is Verschiebung. Oh my God. Vershiebung. Okay. So he's given an example, a very good example here of both condensation and displacement working together. Will be a dream that Freud had, a patient dream, where he dreamt of a patient called Irma. And in the dream, he sees both Irma as representing several people. In some ways, Irma is Irma. In some way, Irma is somebody else. And that is representing the condensation of metaphorical meaning. We also have, in terms of displacement, in that dream, let's see in that one here. In this one, Irma had some physical illness which she didn't really have. And this was a way of dealing with certain anxieties which Freud himself had, which were holding him back in some way. So, a nice picture that might describe the issue that we have in dreams. Let's have a look here and see if we can find it. Yeah, these are nice. So we have here, see it? Pictures here. So if we have a description here, um, yeah. So basically, you're having the the disagreeable thought is coming up, and it's finding a way of it attaches itself to an innocent thought and finds its way back into the conscious mind. So there's various structures in the dream according to Freud. And so we have the preconscious mind, which just before we wake up is preconscious mind. And the mind does a thing called secondary revisioning, whereby it deals with different aspects and cleans up different aspects of the dream. So, for example, you might have a dream that a tiger is chasing you, and you'll find it not that fearful. But actually, if you take this seriously, that dream is actually far more vivid. But your secondary revisioning tones it down. It's only a dream. But actually, it is more close to that reality when you're actually undergoing the dream. That's an example of this. So basically, what's the function of the dream? The function of the dream is to deal with all those things we're working through. We're constantly dealing with different issues, stresses, anxieties, fears, and what would basically be called psychological complexes. So the dream allows these things to come and rise and express themselves. And so dream interpretation is about understanding that there's a lot going on. In general, dreams are mainly anxiety based. Now, sometimes we could say a dream is basically a cleaning dream in the sense that it's just getting rid of all this impressions. Because we have so many impressions every day, it's kind of cleaning the brain, cleaning the memory, and often very busy dreams are just cleaning impressions which are which mean left on your central nervous system basically, and just cleaning it out. It doesn't really mean a lot. But the stuff that means more in the dream is the different aspects of it are going along. So how can you understand that? The best thing to see, for example, if you want to interpret your dreams, is to keep a notebook by the side of the bed. And if you wake up in the middle of the night to say urinate, for example, or first thing in the morning, don't criticize, judge, just try and remember the dream without any criticism. Don't hug your wife or your husband or jump out of bed. Don't do any of these things. Just try and remember because very quickly there's a shift in conscious awareness between sleep and awake. And if you just suddenly jolt, you'll forget the dream. So the best way to remember dreams is to have a notebook and just jot down a few points very quickly. Then you use free association when you get a chance to think of, okay, I saw a castle. What do castles mean to me? And just the first thing that pops into your head. Okay, so castle might be big building. Castle could be history. Castle might be wanting something. Okay, castle. We went to a castle last year. Little bits and pieces. So you jot these things down. Then the next thing is to look back at what happened the day before, what happened yesterday. Often things that happened will trigger that dream. Now, there can be aspects of that dream that go back to things that happened weeks or months beforehand, but the triggering point will always be about what happened yesterday. Dreams often tend to be emotional because we're a lot more emotional, but we're repressing our emotions all the time. So, so jot down notes of what happened in the dream. Do this on a daily basis so you start remembering your dreams more. Um, do it immediately upon awaking so you don't forget it. And then when you get a chance, free associate. And then look at what happened the day before. And that will give you a beginning. If you start doing that regularly, you start seeing certain type of things that come up a lot. And in general, most of us are processing certain things. So, for example, a teenager will probably be processing their school life and their teenage issues. A 40-year-old mom will be having different issues. A 70-year-old person dealing with terminal issue, terminal illness will be different issues. We all have different issues to deal with, but we tend to be processing what's happening in my life now. Sometimes we'll process things that happened to us before because a lot of what happens is quite traumatic and we get traumatized and we can't deal with certain situations. So we might have a dream and we do a bit of an association that goes back to something that happened before. Maybe it was triggered yesterday. Say, for example, you lost your job years ago, a certain job you lost, for example, and then somebody said something about that industry yesterday, and that triggers that memory because you can never deal with that. Things that often happen to a lot of people is they've lost their job, they've lost their love, as in maybe somebody died, or maybe a relationship that failed. And usually the points of anxiety are dealing with that which we cannot understand. Like, I don't know why a marriage failed. I don't know why I couldn't make it in a certain job. I don't know why I couldn't be this very successful sports person I want to be. I don't know why my business isn't better. I don't know why I get upset so much over silly things. So it tends to be something which we cannot deal with. Because human beings, you know, we can deal to a certain degree of making sense out of our life, but there's also a point at which we cannot deal beyond that point. And we have difficulty as human beings dealing with that which we do not understand. Why? And often the case with that's often the case with dreams. Okay, so from a Freudian point of view, your dream is quite individualistic. It will have metaphorical and metonymical instances in it, which he would call condensation displacement. And so we're basically taking a lot of different things that are happening in life, a lot of different people and issues, bunging them together metaphorically, condensing them. So there's a whole bunch of things happening. And then maybe taking other things and trying to reduce the impact of that thing. So it's easier to deal with, which is displacing. It's less important, doesn't matter. And trying to, you know, drift it away somewhere. So when you actually take a look at dreams, what you really find is that we are actually very emotional, and we have, as human beings, we have a lot of complex thoughts. And some of those thoughts are to do with our own lives and things we can't solve. And also some can be quite eschatological in the sense of trying to work out the meaning of life or why things are the way they are. And so there's a lot of complexity in dreams. And some of it is telling you about an issue that you're having today, and some of it's telling you about bigger things where you're trying to understand maybe the meaning of life or why things are the way they are, or maybe coping with grief or whatever it is you're trying to do. So if you really want to, and I'm not saying it's the only form of dream psychology, this is Freud's viewpoint, a little bit mechanical perhaps. But what I like about it is that it's understanding that we're repressing our feelings and we're repressing our thoughts, and we don't necessarily know what's going on deep inside us. So if you look at a movie that came out a few years ago, and the second part came out recently, which was Inside Out, you have these little sub personalities in this girl's head. That's a good representation of what's going on inside of us. We have these sub personalities and these different thoughts and feelings. So sometimes we are repressing things which we do know, as in, I'm really thinking it, but I don't want to think it. But often we're repressing things that we don't even know. They're completely in our subconscious mind. We're not aware. And if you look at things like therapy and psychotherapy and growth as a human being, a lot of it is about bringing from the subconscious or unconscious, as Freud would take it. And as you become more aware, you start to become aware of things in your subconscious mind, and they start to become conscious. And then you start to have empowerment, because what Carl Gustav Jung and Jungian analytical psychology would talk about the shadow. And the shadow is pulling us. It's those things that we cannot see that are pulling us. And so the more we can get them into the light, we're never going to get everything into the light. So basically, dream psychology, Freudian dream psychology, is understanding that we're repressing, and so we're dealing with these many things. So if you want to try and understand your dream, try and understand it from the perspective of uh, condensing, just these metaphorical meanings, and then that you're also displacing. You're trying to make things which are maybe quite painful look less painful, and you're trying to then also put different characters together. But your symbols are going to be different from somebody else. But if you start observing your dreams, you will start understanding your dreams. And it takes a while. You probably have to give it a month or two. If you do, you find it's quite useful. You'll never fully understand everything in your dreams, but you'll start getting some idea of what you're working through as a human being at a deeper level, because everybody's working through some issues, trying to deal with, handle, make sense of what's happening in their life. Don't take dreams literally, they're not literally true. Don't just buy a dream psychology book and think that's it. Try and become aware of your dreams and symbols that are in your dreams. And also, symbols can change. What was a symbol years ago might be a symbol today. And some dreams are going to be complex. And sometimes you'll have, for example, if you have a repetitive dream, or you have a dream whereby if you have a repetitive dream, pretty much you're not dealing with something. Or you might have a dream and say, wow, I dreamt that same dream 10 years ago. Then again, you're dealing with some issue that you had, that same issue in the background. So basically, we are the most complex beings on this planet. Apparently, when we're sleeping, our brains are very active, and we're just processing so much stuff. And a dream is simply a way for your brain to very quickly make sense of things and to de-stress. Because nobody can stay awake for an extended period of time without losing their mind or losing their health. So the dream is a way of detoxing the brain, decluttering the brain, letting go of all those tensions and impressions, and making sense of things. So your brain is doing a lot of work. And if you can do some dream analysis, you can get some hints as about the things that are upsetting you, intriguing you, confusing you, maybe exciting you as well. And, you know, give you some idea of what's happening in your life and maybe choices, decisions that you can make. Quite a complex subject. To read this book, this sort of stuff, you have to read these big books you really want to understand dreams. Okay. Don't just read a dream, interpretation book that just says, the castle is this and the dog is that. So, hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe if you do, and I'll talk to you next time.